The number one spot here might surprise you, and it surprised me because I've never really been a fan or have any affinity for the previous form of this Paradox form, but I've found myself really loving using this Pokemon. Ladies and gentlemen, how's it going? It's me, Jim. Thought I'd do a quick list of my top 10 favorite Pokemon in Gen 9 so far. Gen 9 OU specifically. This is not a viability rank or based on how good they are. It's based on my personal preference, how much fun I have using them or playing against them, how cool they are, how well designed they are. Who are my favorite fellas in Gen 9? I thought I'd do a quick list. Overquill is not one of them. Coming soon. Well, not really soon, in a couple months or something, but I was just taking a look at Overquill for my Hisuian Pokemon vid, which you can check out. I did that recently. First up, we've got Lowkix. This is a new tinted lens user. There's not many of them. There's not many tinted lens users. Off the top of the head, there's like Yanmega. It's a cool ability. Venomoth. I mean, these guys are big nothing. This is a new take on a Pokemon with this ability that I really like. Bug Dark typing. A high attack stat, and access to some cool moves. First impression, big stab U-turn. We got Sucker Punch, Throat Chop, huge stab damage. I think they gave it a good mood set for a tinted lens user. If you guys don't know, this Pokemon's moves basically can't be resisted. They deal damage neutrally to everything. Pokemon's attacks that are not very effective on a target deal double damage. So you do big neutral damage to anything. I think that this is a well-designed Pokemon. The reason it's more at the bottom of the list, it's not the world's most dominant force in OU or anything. It's like, I see it sometimes. I'm not certain that it will stay in OU. I'm not sure because its attack isn't the greatest. It's competing with a lot of heavy hitters that are more overtuned, more threatening. But in terms of design, in terms of flavor, this guy is unique. It offers something different, and I like the design of this thing. I think it's good. Unfortunately, I think that they could have given it a bit more attack or something. If this had like 115 attack, I think that wouldn't be too crazy. As it stands, it's like a little bit on the less viable side in OU, I think. But I like what they've done with this guy. Up next, we've got Iron Hands. Number 9 on my list. Iron Hands I like. I think that Hariyama has not been viable for a long time. And I like this guy in like OU Gen 3. But he hasn't been OU or viable in OU since then. And, you know, Hariyama, if you look at it, is a pretty unique Pokemon. It's got huge attack and health, but then like really bad defenses, really bad everything else. It's got thick fat guts. Like, it's got a unique set of traits. Unfortunately, like, you remove a little bit of Hariyama's identity when you have to slap Quark Drive on it, just like every other robot Pokemon, you know? Like, Thick Fat and Guts are both cool abilities. Oh, it even has Sheer Force. I didn't know that, actually. You don't see this thing much. I wish that they gave these, like, hidden abilities or something, because it's kind of lame that they all have the same ability, but it's still a unique, you know, type profile for a bulky attacker. Its stats are kind of ridiculous. I feel like they didn't think through the design of this that much. They kind of just took Hariyama and gave it electric typing and more stats. But this thing ends up being a cool presence in the metagame, I think. It's a bulky attacker. I like it as a wall breaker, as a pivot. It's good against Volt Switch and like Drain Punch. You know, I like using bulky attackers. I think this one's really strong, and it's not too annoying either. You can break through it. Its typing's vulnerable, stuff like that. Like, I think it's a good presence in the metagame. The reason it's a bit lower on the list is just because some parts of the design of this guy I think are a bit lazy. Like, in some ways, it's just Hariyama with more stats and less identity. But Hariyama was kind of unviable anyway, so they've basically taken Hariyama and made it viable at the cost of a little bit of its flair. Which, yeah, anyway. Up next, I've got Orthworm, who is another one that I don't know if it's going to stay OU, but this thing is a cool defensive Pokemon design. Earth Eater, logical new ability to exist, right? Ground immunity that heals, similar to Water Absorb, on a Steel type. That's just an inherently powerful idea right there. And then it's got all the hazards. It's got Shed Tail. This is a much more... I think that, you know, when the meta first came out, I thought Shed Tail might be such a problem. It's going to be so broken. I think it's only a problem on Cyclizar because it's so fast and has regen. Whether it's actually going to be a problem long term and get banned, I actually can't say. But Shed Tail on Earthworm feels way, way, way more balanced and like better than it does against... Like Cyclizar is annoying. Cyclizar is kind of annoying. Orthworm is not that annoying. It's handleable. It's a more modest Shed Tail user that is more... It's a more honest Shed Tail user. It's got all the hazards. It's got body press. Its name is good. A lot of names in Gen 9 suck. Like, even Iron Hands that was just there. Terrible name. What is that one? Quaquaval? Like, there's a lot of bad names that do not roll off the tongue. Orthworm? Good name. It's simple, but it's easy to say. It's just going to be easy to say at the least, you know? Yeah, Orthworm is very cool. Orthworm. Orthworm, I said. Up next, I've got Clodsire, another defensive Pokemon, who... Some people do say that this might drop from OU, eventually. Maybe when new stuff comes back and there's too much power. I bet something people said is that if Tapu Lele comes back, this thing is going to struggle, which I guess I agree with that. But for now, very cool. Building off of Quagsire. I made a vid about this guy recently. You take Quagsire and you don't just... Sometimes when they build off a Pokemon, they just make it... What if that Pokemon just had more stats? They actually distributed the stats differently. Instead of just buffing the stats, they gave it a unique typing. You know, Nidoking has this typing, but this is a unique typing for a special wall. And, you know, it's got Water Absorb and Unaware, both of which are good, both which have merit, and... You don't really use Poison Point, but Water Absorb, Unaware, both good. This is a good defensive Pokemon because it has typing that's exploitable. You can hit this thing. You can nail it down. The annoying defensive Pokemon are like Toxapex, where they... Like, Toxapex has weaknesses, but it also has, like, reliable recovery and regen, and it's difficult to actually pin the thing down and take it out. You can break through it in ways. It's not, like, unkillable, unwallable, but it's an annoying Pokemon. Clodsire, not that annoying. Excels in some areas defensively, but you can break through it. It's got the typing. It's got cool tools as well. I mean, pretty standard for a defensive Pokemon, like Recover, Hazards, Toxic, whatever, but this thing, like, this is what I want out of a defensive Pokemon. I don't want some unkillable, stupid guy like Magic Guard Clef or like Toxapex, you know. I hated those guys. Clodsire is... I think... Speaking of which... I think they're doing a better job designing new defensive Pokemon, like Orthworm, very cool. Clodsire, cool. Speaking of which, Dondozo. This is, I think, a well-designed user of Unaware. Its stats are pretty crazy when you look at him. The reason I like this as an Unaware user is because it doesn't have immediate recovery. It only has rest. Which means, yes, this can act as a defensive buffer against boost sweepers like, you know, Dragonite, Roaring Moon, whatever. It's got body press to hit those guys too. Plus it acts as a general good defensive wall against those guys. Like, if you compare this to, like, I don't know, Quagsire, a previous Unaware user, or Clefable, previous Unaware user, right? You know, fairly low base stats, but they're carried by the fact that they're Unaware, and they have good typings that don't have many weaknesses. Like Quagsire literally has grass weakness, and then Fairy is weak to, you know, Steel and Poison, which are pretty uncommon. So they get by on the fact that, like, their typing is good, and they have Unaware, which makes them a good wall. But what I like about Dondozo is that it's more good as a general physical wall than these guys are. Like, these guys are low base stats. They can't actually, you know, defensively check a big threat. But this guy, Dondozo, can come in and against, like, a strong offensive Pokemon like Chinpow and still check it. But also, it can't do that forever because it doesn't have immediate health. So you got to use Dondozo smartly. You can't let your Dondozo get too chipped down and damaged. Otherwise, you're going to be forced to rest. And when you rest, you're more vulnerable. You're stuck for 2 turns as sitting duck. They can take advantage of that. They can make progress somehow. They can start setting up hazards or boost up or whatever. Similar to like, you know, Suicune in ADVOU, where forcing it to rest is often a good game plan. You know, that thing is nuts defensively, but the fact that it only has rest as its healing move is what balances it, because that basically cripples it for a little bit. To be able to heal, you have to cripple yourself. Or, you know, there's rest talk, but then if you're running rest talk, you can't afford the move slot. You could only run, say, Curse Body Press or Curse Wave Crash or something. So you have to be decisive on Dondozo. Do I want water coverage? Do I want fighting coverage? Body Press off my big defense? Do I want both of them? And then I have to sacrifice Sleep Talk. Gives me wider coverage, lets me hit ghosts and other stuff, but then I can't Sleep Talk and be threatening while I'm rested. You can't just do everything on Dondozo. You have to think about it. This thing is not going to like win games off Curse Rest Talk very easily because it's inherently limited in what it can actually sweep, right? So I think that this Pokemon creates satisfying gameplay where there's like a cat and mouse game between defense and offense, where their Dondozo is always threatening to block your boost sweep from going off, but then you can force in their Dondozo with like Chen Pao. Maybe you got spikes up, you're chipping it down, you're forcing it to rest. Now that it's rested, maybe you go off with your defensive guy, you suss out what they're said. The gameplay's cool with defensive Pokemon like this. You know, it creates good situations like that. So I like Dondozo. Up next we have Iron Moth. Worst name in Gen 9, I will say. Worst Pokemon name. Iron Moth is the laziest Pokemon name ever. Of all time. 100%. But I like this. I think that they did a good job with Slitherwing too. Slitherwing, though, is not on the list because it's like UU. Not really that viable. I like this guy's design, though. They did a good job with the Volcarona forms. I like that this has access to Energy Booster. It's one of the better Energy Booster users because it's so immediately threatening. I like that it has Toxic Spikes and Morning Sun. You can use it as kind of like a weird special defense wall with... Its typing isn't great at it, but you can use it like that. There's like the boot sets. And what sets it apart from Volk regular form is its typing, and it doesn't have Quiver Dance. It has agility, though. It's more immediately threatening on a booster energy set or a spec set or something, but then... Yeah, there's a real trade-off between using this versus Volk, and they both feel balanced, whereas some of the other designs of the Paradox Pokemon are like either direct upgrades straight up to their original forms, or they're just worse or weird or not that cool. Like Iron Jugulus straight up sucks. I hate the Iron Jugulus. Not an Iron Jugulus fan. They took one of the coolest Pokemon of all time, Hydreigon, and they were like, what if we made it less cool? You know? Iron Moth it does different stuff. It excels in different areas. It provides different gameplay. It's also fine to play against and to use, like using it. Usually you're set up for a sweep in a situation that is advantageous or whatever. It's not that fast. It's not like destroying the metagame right now like Chi-Yu or something. And when you're up against it, it's got the exploitable typing. Of course, it has Terra Grass and all that, but... Yeah, I feel like Iron Moth is cool. It doesn't feel too annoying to play with or against. Like, it's a good... I enjoy this guy in the metagame. I think it's cool. And up next, my fourth favorite is Kingambit. Kingambit. I love a wall breaker, and this guy is a crazy wall breaker. I like that it has, you know, Swords Dance, huge attack stat, great typing for the meta. It's kind of just Bishop power creep, but I guess Bishop needed a bit of power creep, but it couldn't keep up. And I've always really liked Bishop. I like the Sucker Punch mind game. I think like you can sometimes run Defiant on it. You probably don't. Supreme Overlord's way better, but yeah, I guess this thing, the design of it isn't that great when you think about the fact that it's just Bishop power creep, but I love using it. I think also it's fine to play, like playing against it feels okay. It's a cool type combo. I really don't have as much to say about this. It's a pretty simple Pokemon when you look at it, but I really enjoy using it, and I think it's one of the things that makes Gen 9 stand out to me is this guy. Like, Bishop, but insane. I like it. Alright. Up next is something that people might kill me for, but I've got Ting-Lu as my third favorite. Ting-Lu is what I used basically to achieve the requirements for suspect vote. If it wasn't for Ting-Lu, I never would have made it there, and I would like to thank Ting-Lu. Ting-Lu creates consistency in a chaotic world. Ting-Lu can soft check anything. It can, well, not absolutely anything. It's weak to fighting and stuff, but I think adding a Ting-Lu to your team improves like so many matchups. I like that it destroys Grimmsnarl because they can't taunt you. They do nothing with Spirit Break because you're so bulky. And you can just make hazards. You have Whirlwind to cripple whatever they go into in their screen setter. They can't parting shot you. It fails. And I hate Grimmsnarl teams. So I love that this is not only a generally good defensive backbone, hazard setter, anti-setup Pokemon with Whirlwind. You defeat Espathra teams. You defeat like... You may not like defensively... You may not be able to kill a Dragonite or something, but you can Whirlwind it away once, prevent a sweep or two. It's always going to help out in those matchups against explosive boost sweepers. Exception of Annihilate, who just taunts you and bulks up in your face, but every other one pretty much. And then, like, I really... You know, I'm a Gen 3 player. I love a defensive guy that can make spikes. What can I say? You know, good old-fashioned Skarmory. Can't go wrong with it. What can I say? I'm a Pokemon boomer or something. I love go to the defensive Pokemon, create spikes, make permanent progress, and then go to an offensive guy and spikes enhance your offensive guy because defensive switches become more dangerous for the enemy. Simple idea that you can never go wrong with, folks. Spikes, fun move. I also like Ruination. Allows you to, you know, cripple random stuff coming in against you. I enjoy that. It's got Body Press. It's got Earthquake. It reminds me of like Skarm or Swampert in Gen 3. It's a solid, reliable defensive Pokemon that is going to improve a million matchups for you and make ladder feel more consistent. So I enjoy it for that. It's also unique typing-wise, flavor-wise. It doesn't have like OP recovery moves. You can break through it still. I don't mind playing against it. I used to find it annoying, but it's manageable. It's vulnerable to spikes itself. You can, you know, like Great Tusk threatens a lot. Often switching to Ting-Lu is predictable on their part, so you can like double to something and threaten them or whatever. Yeah, I like Ting-Lu. Up next we got Great Tusk. Speaking of a Pokemon that is generally good, that is an asset to almost any team, Great Tusk is probably my most used Pokemon in Gen 9. I love it. I love that it's both an offensive threat and a utility Pokemon. I love that it's like such a great, logical, strong user of knockoff when not many exist anymore. I love like Headlong Rush, Close Combat. I love its move pool. And this thing is just... Metas always need a good old-fashioned, reliable utility guy that also does even more than that. And this guy enhances any team. It's also just cool. It's Donphan, but it's ancient beast version of Donphan. You know, with all my Pokemon skepticism in the world, I've played this game for far too long in my life. I've grown skeptical of each new release, and of Game Freak, and their design choices. But I see Great Tusk, my child brain activates, and I say, this is cool. This is very cool. It's Donphan, but it's got horns on it. Looks like a dinosaur or something. Looks like an ancient mammoth. They did an amazing job on the visuals. It's Donphan. It's not even really Donphan. It's a different Pokemon. Donphan is not fast. Donphan does not have 1 million attack. It has Rapid Spin, but it doesn't have fighting typing. I like Assault Vest on this. All its sets are cool and good. And how could this be an annoying Pokemon? It's weak to certain things. You can defeat it. It's not like slippery and you can't pin it down. You can pin it down. You can kill him. Great presence in the metagame. All around awesome. And the number one spot here might surprise you. And it surprised me. Because I've never really been a fan or have any affinity for the previous form of this Paradox form, but I've found myself really loving using this Pokemon and loving what it brings to the table, and that is Iron Valiant. This is my #1 favorite Pokemon to use in Gen 9. Because I love a good old-fashioned mixed attacker. There's not many of them, you know? And this is like a perfectly designed mixed attacker in my eyes. Because look at its... They had the gonads to give this guy like really, really good stats for both offenses. It's not often you see this. And then I think that it's very well balanced because it's so frail. And it's not that fast for an offensive Pokemon in this metagame. But it's threatening and its move pool has absolutely everything. Its typing is like fantastic offensively. I think that this thing is delightful. As a you know, I love an offensive threat. I come from Gen 3. Mixed threats are the big thing in Gen 3. Mixed Salamence. Mixed Tyranitar. Like, back when you didn't need to have 100 stats to be threatening because the power level was so low. Something like a Salamence with modest but not great special attack could run like Fire Blast, Grass, Brick Break or something and threaten like half the metagame. And you're guessing what coverage it has, you don't know. You can go so custom with the movesets on this. It's got Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Close Combat. It even has like Psyshock to hit Clodsire. You can theoretically hit anything you want. You can fill whatever gaps you want in terms of what you need to hit with this Pokemon. You can... And then also, I mean, how can this Pokemon be that annoying to fight? It's so frail. It dies to like a slight breeze sometimes. Any prior move will knock it down. It's also slow, so it's a very logical use of booster energy to increase its speed, and then it's a great late game cleaner. But you can't just go to it and go off with it immediately. It's an important thing. You got to consider when to go off with the booster energy. As soon as you switch it in, that's it. You're going off with it. You're never going to be fast again. So you got to think, when am I going to use this? It's always like a strategic choice. When am I going to go off with the booster energy? And I think that kind of thing, it rewards a skillful player. Like me, of course. No, just kidding. It's just delightful to use this Pokemon. I really enjoy it. And I think they did a good job on the design here. It feels fair for a Pokemon that has such stats offensively. It's crazy that 364 speed doesn't feel that fast anymore, but it really doesn't. There's so many things that are like Meowscarada is 370 something. Dragapult exists, that's like 400 something. Chimpao, whatever. A lot of Scarf, Chi-Yu and all that too, so. But yeah. Yeah, many games with this, it comes down to like, how do you set up for the clean with Iron Valiant? And then I haven't even talked about like all the other different sets, choice specs on it, or, you know, boots or some other item like Life Orb or whatever. And then you can go Swords Dance. It's got Shadow Sneak. It's got Close Combat. A Swords Dance set is a great wall breaker too. Like, there's bluffing potential. You can threaten Fairy move even if you don't even have it. You can threaten Electric move or Ghost move if you don't even have it. And then allow yourself a turn to Swords Dance. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Iron Valiant. And it's so fun to use. Doesn't feel unfair to play against at all. In my eyes. Anyway. What do you guys think? Do you disagree with any of my opinions here? Do you hate the Pokemon that I mentioned? Do you have a favorite that I didn't mention? Should I do a top 10 worst Pokemons list? Would you guys like that? Because I could do that. Top 10 least favorite Pokemon. Garganicle's definitely on there. Spoiler alert. Garganicle is for sure making my least favorite list. Who's on your least favorite list? Chi-Yu? Probably. I don't know. Patrons are on the screen. Thank you, guys. And here's me. Check out my other videos. To all the Terastallize fans, I'm sorry for what I said in the vid where I said I'm going to vote against it. I take it all back, okay? I take it all back. I'm a Terastallize fan now. Nah, not really, but I am sorry if I have alienated half of my audience based on the very divisive topic of becoming the crystal on your Pikachu. It's a crazy world we live in where the whole Pokemon community is divided, but let's all come together and enjoy these cool Pokemon. We can all agree that Great Tusk is cool, and let's all unify on that belief, folks. Dondozo is cool, okay? Let's all enjoy Pokemon in this time of negativity. Goodbye. Woohoo.